Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kieran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there. Could you imagine in your head if I said a nasal sounding singer? Yeah,
absolutely.
So if you were listening to a band thinking, well, the band sounds that singer sounds too nasally or a bit too kind of honky sounding, It's not been EQ'd properly, you'd understand, you can picture in your mind's ear what that sounds like, right? But can you translate that to a frequency range on an EQ? If you were to immediately try and EQ that out to make it sound better, a bit more rounded, a bit more flat, would you know what frequency to go to immediately? Greetings, welcome to this week's show. Now, this week we are carrying on with our part 2 of the live sound conversation that Kieran and I had a few weeks ago. We've been talking about the things that you can do to boost the experience for yourselves and for your listeners at your shows with your band. And I think what we discovered together when we spoke about this is that we can make some pretty big improvements with just a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of extra kit to support your PA system, and giving it a go. Hope you enjoy it. Come and follow us on our social media pages. You can find them at facebook.com/guitarsmarts and on Instagram as well. You can find us there at guitar_smarts. And remember, the biggest thing you can do to support our show is to give us a rating and a review on a podcast platform that you listen to us on. I've made it easy for you though. There are some links in the description of the podcast that will take you to the different places that you can leave us a rating and a review. That would be really helpful. Finally, we've actually now started to create some merchandise too. So within the description of the podcast, you can find a link to our Etsy store where you can get hold of some Guitar Smarts merchandise. We've got some hats, t-shirts, iPhone cases, and also we have a mug, so you can get a nice Guitar Smarts coffee mug too. Come and support us there, that'd be really helpful. And also, if you don't want to buy any merchandise but you do want to support the show, go to the description, and again you can find a link in there to buymeacoffee.com/Guitar Smarts, where you can make a donation to the show to show your support, and that would really help us to cover the cost of running the show. Anyway, that's enough waffle from me. Hope you enjoy the show today. Let's get to it.
As I'm listening to you and talking through some of this stuff, the more I'm appreciating, obviously, why it's such a skill and such a wonderful thing to be able to have a sound engineer out with you if you're gigging, because all of these things are like they know all of this stuff and they know how to do this. Because when you did all of this for us in our previous band, you did it in a very chilled out, very relaxed way. There was no stress with it. And obviously this is knowledge you've accrued and a sensibility that you've accrued to do this that comes, almost as second nature. And I think that's something that, as I'm listening to you going, right, I've got to remember this and we've got to work through all of these steps. I'm realizing this is quite a level of detail and quite not a daunting thing, but it's something that we've got to remember to do in a kind of nice sequential way to get it right. It's not a case of just miking up the guitar cabs, chucking them through the PA and turning the sliders up to see what happens, because
exactly
it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Exactly, it is a bit more nuanced, but it doesn't have to be complicated as long as you follow a kind of process, and the process should be, kind of, and I'll go into it in more detail later on. I'll give you an example of the process I would follow if I was doing sound for a band. But the process should be, basically set your equipment up, set your microphones up, check everything individually first in headphones, using your judgment to make sure it sounds okay. Mix things in your headphones so that you can hear everything together, and then start listening to how things sound out the front. And then from there, maybe start looking at your monitor mixes, which for a lot of bands, a good monitor mix is just the front of house mix, maybe with their individual instrument pushed slightly. That's what I like. If I'm in a band I'm being given my own monitor mix, and the sound engineer says, "What do you want?" I'll often ask for I just want the front of house mix, so I can hear the whole band. I can hear what the front of house is listening, but can I have a bit more of me so that I can, I know what I'm playing well. That's where I would start.
I think that's what most people want, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You kind of want to hear yourself in the album kind of thing. There's a couple of things as well I wanted to speak about in terms of equipment. So microphones. So there's all kinds of different types of microphones. If you're intending to just mic up your guitar amps and you want to mic up a kick drum, you probably want a different microphone for your kick drum. You want something with a larger diaphragm that's going to pick up more low end, more of that thump that you're looking for, and click from the beta maybe. That's really what you're hearing when you hear a kick drum, is a mix of a number of things. The fundamental low end thump that's happening. You're also hearing like the sound of the drum itself, which is like the boxiness, and also you're hearing the click of the beta. You want to be able to allow for all of that. So a large diaphragm microphone will give you all of that into your desk, and then you can EQ those different elements to get the right sound. Get cases and boxes for everything. Look after your equipment. You don't want to be... I remember when we were in Roadrunner, I seem to remember for years and years, we had just gaffer taped up boxes for everything. And then eventually we got flight cases for stuff. Yeah. And it actually made our lives easier. We had proper boxes for everything. We could carry things easier. We didn't have breaking cardboard boxes for lights and stuff. It just your life becomes a lot easier. You mentioned earlier on your band, you don't go out with a sub. You go out with two 15-inch tops. Okay. So I wanted to speak about that because I think there's a lot of people that go out in bands and they have these larger speakers for tops. You've got 15-inch speakers or, 12-inch speakers. Those, the specs say it can handle down to 20 hertz. And, so we don't need a sub. There's still an advantage to having a sub because you've got to remember when they've said it can go down to 20 hertz, they're probably putting a 20 hertz sine wave into it, and it's just doing 20 hertz, and they can hear it at a certain pressure level. But that's not what your speaker's doing for the entirety of your gig. When you're putting your band through it, you're asking it to do 20 hertz and 100 and 500 and 4,000 and 10,000 because of the sizzle on the the hi-hats maybe, and you're asking it to do all that stuff at the same time. And low frequencies act very differently to high frequency stuff. Low frequency is not very directional. It goes everywhere. And that means it takes a lot of energy for your speaker to manage low frequency stuff.
That's right.
And if you've got a lot of high frequency and upper mids and stuff happening as well in that speaker, then asking even a 15-inch speaker that's very capable of doing low-end stuff to do all of it at once, it's not going to sound as good as you having a sub and a top and having them so that they're doing different parts of the frequency range.
Exactly.
A sub is still a 15-inch speaker, just in a different cabinet.
It's just dedicated to those frequencies that it can handle comfortably and not be burdened by the other frequencies. Exactly, so you get a better range of frequencies appropriate for that speaker, and it's not being clipped with any particular frequencies, and hopefully it just creates a more pleasurable audio experience rather than any one speaker feeling like it's taking on too much.
Exactly that. And if you've got a sub that does the crossing over for you, so you can put your full frequency range mix into that sub and it will automatically separate the stuff it is responsible for and then loop out from it into your top, then not only is your sub then dedicated to only doing the stuff it's really good at, but your top now isn't tasked with doing as much. There's not as much of that frequency range going through. So you get a higher fidelity sound throughout the entire frequency range from employing the sub. And you don't have to have two. You don't have to have two subs and two tops. I've gigged before with other bands where we've just gone out with two tops and one sub. And that's worked beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason why that works really well is, like I said before, because of the non-directional nature of low frequency sound, it does tend to go everywhere.
That's right.
High frequency stuff is very directional. You do need two speakers for high frequency stuff.
Yeah, it's like your 5.1 or 7.1 cinema setup at home, isn't it? It's like the 0.1 is the sub. You don't need, you can have two subs, and that's lovely. You can have as many subs as you want, but you don't necessarily need it because low frequencies fill the room in a different way. It's not easy to pinpoint where it's coming from, but so long as it's there, it will fill in that range of the spectrum that you want to be there to give you that low end.
Exactly that. And it's, again, if you're trying to do this because you want to have a better experience on stage, but you also want to create a higher fidelity experience for your audience, then having, a sub is going to massively improve that as well. And the other thing to point out here as well, which we haven't mentioned, it's not just about your kind of fidelity as a band and the experience for the audience, but it goes a lot to improving the kind of perception of your band from a professional standpoint. You're gonna appear, attractive to more, kind of events and the types of gigs. If you can do a very professional show in terms of not just the songs you play and how well you play, but the sound and the experience for the venue, and then you're going to get more gigs. You're going to get better paid gigs. It's really important, I think, to think about the fidelity of your sound in this way.
I agree, and I think that's a really often overlooked point that you make. I mean, a lot of people start with it from a very self-orientated mindset, which is we want to have a better sound experience with the musicians on stage. Okay, well, let's invest a bit in our sound. Oh, and then the added benefit of that will be that the audience will get a better sound. Well, arguably, you should be starting with that first. But the even bigger picture is that if you want to grow and be able to access more gigs and get better bookings and things, it's the sound quality and things that people will remember when they'll go, that band sounded amazing. And that's why the investment often will then pay dividend, because you'll be booking better venues, better gigs. You can command a higher price, right? People can tell the difference between just a good amateur pub band and a band that goes out with a really decent professional sound setup, which allows you then to go, well, this is how much we charge per gig. But you can see why, because the sound quality that we deliver is that next step up.
Exactly that, and that's going to improve your income and your just everything really for your band. You're going to have a better experience going forward, and it doesn't take a huge amount of effort. It just takes, like we've said so far, just a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of effort, just some careful considerations for how you do things, maybe a little bit of extra time before a gig to set up. You can just, the benefits are far greater than the extra effort you have to put in. I wanted to also talk about monitoring, fold back, individual monitor mixes, whether that's through wedges or in-ear monitors. And there's multiple approaches to this depending on the number of auxiliary buses that you might have on your desk. Do you said you've got like a 12-channel, powered desk with your band. Do you know how many auxiliary mixes that you have?
I don't.
Okay. So chances are you've probably got one or two on that size desk. If you've got a 12-channel desk with, stereo out, built-in FX, you've probably got maximum two auxiliary buses, which means you've got, what an auxiliary bus is it's a separate mix bus. So you think of your main output, the two faders that you would put up that goes to your front of house, that's your main mix bus. And you can pre-fader mix your own auxiliary mix of everything that's going through the desk as well. That's how we get our own monitor mixes. So what that means is you could have the whole band going through the front of house, but you can have auxiliary mix number one going to the singers, IEMs, or floor wedge. And what that allows you to do is have a completely different mix for the singer that you would adjust on the desk. And then maybe auxiliary two could be a shared mix between everybody else in the band. That could be more like the front of house. But if your vision in your mind is that, hey, I want our band in the future to be able to have everyone has their own monitor mix, then you need to count how many different monitor mixes you need, and that's basically how many different auxiliary mixes your desk needs to have. If that means upgrading your desk, then you need to have that in mind when you upgrade your desk.
Yeah, got you.
And if you've got a digital desk, by the way, this is something that's really cool that you see most days now.
I gigged with it the other day with Damien's band, and I was just blown away by this technology. It was amazing.
Yeah, so most bands that I go out with now, I haven't seen a band go out with a desk for ages in kind of the wedding circuit. Most guys now are going out with digital desks which are basically just a connection box with a Wi-Fi signal, and everything's done over the iPad. And that desk can have however many inputs, however many outputs. But the coolest thing about those is that what they all offer you now is individual control over your auxiliary buses. So as the guitarist now, I don't need to go, hey, Mr. Sound Engineer, I need more guitar in my speakers. All of a sudden, I can do it myself off my iPhone.
That's what everyone did at this gig. It was so cool. Everyone, the sound engineer, just said, here's the URL, here's the address, or here's the app to download, and there you go. Make your own monitor box.
Exactly. And I've made a recommendation. So there's lots of people like Behringer do them. Allen and Heath do them, but Soundcraft do one. Soundcraft are a fantastic brand. They've been around for years. One of the best companies that makes mixing desks. They do one called the UI16 remote control digital mix. It's got 12 mic inputs, 4 auxiliary buses. That's really good for your basic band. It's obviously got main front of house out, and it's got effects built in. You can control everything over an iPad. You can connect. All your different band members can connect via a web browser to control their own monitor mixes. You can do everything you'd need to do that we've talked about doing. Phantom power for any mics that you use that need phantom power. Just really great. And do you know how much that is?
I must say, I looked when you sent me the link, because I was like, I think this is going to be a step for me to convince the band I'm in to go down this route, because I'm not sure how up they are for investing in a lot of new equipment and things. But I was gobsmacked at how reasonable it was. Absolutely gobsmacked. I was like, wow, that's less than a gig. Right?
Exactly. It's 300 odd quid for a desk that it doesn't have. Obviously, you need a separate power amp for your speakers.
Yes,
or if you've got active speakers, then it's a no-brainer. You can turn up to a gig with your active speakers and that desk and an iPad or a computer or a phone. You can do your sound for the entire gig from a phone if you want. And that's all you need. It's the way forward, definitely. And then you can say to your bandmates, well, if you want more kick drum in your monitor mix or whatever, do it. You can do it yourself. Just open it up on your phone. Just connect to it. Open it up on your phone. You can restrict access to everyone who's in the band, so they only can control their own monitor mix and not the front of house.
So
things
cool.
like that are great.
So cool. 350 quid. I mean, that just shows you how technology is advanced, doesn't it? I dare say if we were in Roadrunner still, this is the direction we would be going. I mean, it's a no-brainer now, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, that's basically what we had when we were. The desk we had was I think we had an Allen and Heath 16-channel analog desk with built-in digital effects. It had 4 or 5 auxiliary buses, I think. And I think that retailed for about $1,000, that desk.
Yeah.
We got, now you can get something that is about, that was big. We had a big flight case, right? That was a big old task to carry that, that Soundcraft one you could put in a backpack, because there's no faders, there's no controls on it. It's just inputs and outputs. So it's just a box of inputs and outputs, and all the faders are digital inside software connected. So it's great. And then you don't even need a table for your mixer. If you're at a small venue, that mixer can just sit under your speakers on the floor.
That's it.
It's just so easy to set up and do. We're not sponsored by Soundcraft, by the way, I should mention.
There are other manufacturers of digital desks. What do you call them? Is it a digital desk? Or?
Yeah, digital mixer, I'd say.
Digital mixer. Whatever. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So having something like that really just explodes the capability you have to get your sound right, both front of house and on stage. The last thing I wanted to mention was having some equipment-wise was like DI boxes.
Yes.
So if you've got like keys in a band or some kind of high impedance signal. So high impedance meaning it's not a balanced audio signal like a guitar. Let's say you do want to use the output from, say, like a Line 6 pod or something like that. It doesn't have a balanced output. You want to maybe get that over a long cable run back to your desk or something. You should use a DI box for that. The reason why you would use a DI box, do you know what the difference is between balanced and unbalanced in terms of audio?
No, I know the terms, and I know that for certain things you need a balanced input, but I've never really understood why that is from an electrical perspective.
Okay, so I'll explain to you why that is. So you notice a microphone always has an XLR connection. So always got
which is balanced, right?
Balanced, low impedance signal. So what that means is basically low impedance just means that it's balanced. It means that it is it's going to provide a good signal over a long cable run. And the reason it's doing that is because it's actually got two signals. You've got a ground and you've got a positive and a negative. You've always got those three connections on an XLR. You've got a positive and a negative. And what your microphone's doing is it's sending the same signal twice on that cable, on those two different pins, but they're exactly out of phase with each other. So if you can imagine a sine wave going up and down, that's your positive connection. If you imagine turning that sine wave exactly the other way around, that's your negative connection. So they're doing exactly the opposite thing, the same signal. So you get twice the signal over a long cable run. Now, you're going to pick up interference along that cable run on both of those connections. What happens at the other end when you get to the desk, a preamp that has a balanced input, what it will do is it will flip the phase of one of those signals so that it's the same as the other and add them together so that you get twice the signal. But because the interference is now generated in phase on both of those signals, when you turn that, when the preamp does its thing of turning one of those signals back in phase with the other, the interference is now out of phase with itself and it cancels itself out. Right. So it's an automatic way of getting rid of any noise and interference on the connection. So that's why a balanced signal is important, because you could connect a microphone to a cable that's 200 foot long and you'd still get a good signal to your desk because of that balanced connection. If you connected something that wasn't balanced, that was high impedance, that just had one conductor sending the signal, you'd struggle to get good audio past about 30 feet because of interference and the effects of resistance over distance. So that's why it's important to DI some things that aren't balanced output already.
I'm just you explained that so beautifully, and I got it. Thank you, Matt. That's brilliant. That's knowledge earned for life.
So again, it doesn't have to be complex electronics really to kind of understand these things. It's just having a DI box in your kit bag is going to come in handy occasionally when, let's say you've got an iPad that you're using for backing tracks or for sound effects or something, and you need to get that from your mic stand to the desk, which is 30 feet away. You could use a very long mini jack cable, but when you listen to that on headphones, you're probably going to be picking up quite a lot of interference on that cable over that distance. And when you start raising the volume of that for your front of house mix, that means you're really increasing the noise floor of the system. What you're doing is you're decreasing the space between the noise floor and the signal. And what you want to do is increase that space as much as possible. You want your signal noises to be high and your noise floor to be low. So not having balanced signal chains really adversely affects your noise to signal ratio. You want to keep that down. That was it really. So in terms of equipment, it's, make sure your mixing desk has the inputs and outputs that you need, including auxiliary buses and effects buses. I'd recommend getting, a compact digital desk that you can control from an iPad. But if you're used to using something more physical, there's still some really good ones out there. Mics, depending on what you're miking up, drums, guitar amps, whether it's horn, percussion, horns, things like that. For the most part, having a bag full of Shure SM58s and 57s and enough mic stands is going to get you out of jail for almost everything. That's true. Except your kick drum. So
great advice.
Anyway, have you got any questions before?
Oh man, yeah. Can you come down and engineer one of our gigs and teach us all of this in a live setting? I mean, look, man, what you've shared today is like invaluable information, and I must say, I read through the agenda that you put together ahead of this podcast, and I just thought this is fantastic. This is a really nice logical flow to how to approach this, and I think it's now taking some of this amazing theory and knowledge that you've shared with us today and putting it into practice. And I want to start doing that with the band that I've just joined as well, to see and hopefully demonstrate to them the virtues and benefits of doing this. So, but it's also reminded me as to why having a good sound engineer on a gig is just invaluable, because this is the unsung member of the band, right? Who just makes it all work. Because what you've talked about does require additional equipment and additional time, albeit you and others that are very competent in doing this, that I've gigged with in the past, just take it in their stride, and it doesn't really eat into the additional setup time. But I know for us, it's going to require, at least for the first few times, if we're going to go down this route, it's going to require some additional setup time. So so we've got to get there earlier just to get all of this in, working properly as you've described. But I've got a million questions, mate. But I think what would be great is if we start trying this out with my band, and then we'll come back to you on some of the things that we experienced and noticed. And then you can take it from there. But wow, what a great starter today, and for anyone listening and thinking about how they can get a better onstage sound, a better front of house sound, and overall just a more pleasurable experience using some simple equipment that won't break the bank. Thanks, Matt. That's really useful.
No worries. I mean, it's take a simple approach. I mean, you guys in your band, you don't need to change everything for it to get better. Like you said, you can just a couple of mics to mic up your guitar amps, and then you can bring your guitar amp volume down on stage, and that's going to change the world for you guys. You can start improving the balance of things out front as well, because now you can get a nice spread of audio from your PA speakers. You can start having your guitar coming back in your monitors slightly, which is going to mean you can hear yourselves well enough without being crazy loud on stage again. You're going to feel happy you've got a better mix. You're going to feel happy people can hear you out front better. And if all of a sudden you need to be louder on stage, just don't do it from your amp. Do it from your auxiliary mix. Then you're not affecting the balance of anything on the front. So just doing that, just miking up those two things and putting them through the desk like that is going to change the world for you guys. It doesn't have to be everything that I've said. So, but like just a quick example process for what I would do for a gig. Number one, obviously you set up, you position your speakers and monitors, get everything set up and connected. The way you would do connections as well, I would always connect all the inputs to your PA, connect all the outputs from your PA, turn your desk on, and then lastly turn your speakers on. You don't want to have your speakers on and then turning other things on, getting pops and bangs going through your PA speakers and things. Connect your headphones to your PA. Do that next, because remember, you're going to be checking everything through headphones first, so you can be happy with the sound of everything. Use some background music, plug a iPod or whatever, some MP3s into your PA system and get them playing through all your speakers. That's your line check to make sure all your speakers and the connections are working. Remember to check all your mics work. So if you've got all your mics plugged in, now go from channel to channel, just doing a line check. Yeah, every mic works. Listen for noise and cracks and pops and things, so you can check if cables are faulty. Then turn all your mics on to the front of house. And one of the things we haven't talked about is just feedback control. So you might not have much control on your desk over like a global EQ, like a graphic EQ for the main mix, but you'll have what's called parametric EQ on each of your channels for your mics, right? So you can use that effectively to control feedback. Feedback's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing in a performance. If you're setting up and doing a sound check, feedback is very important. If you're in a band and you get feedback, people tend to panic. What would you do if you got feedback on a microphone? What's the first thing you would do?
Well, the first thing you do is turn down the microphone, right?
Exactly. That's what you would do as a response. But what you should do really is, before the gig, you should be finding these frequencies where feedback tends to occur for the venue. Every venue has resonating frequencies that can add up on top of each other, and you end up with spikes and dips in certain frequency ranges. So you can find those in your sound check. That's what I would do next. I'd just turn my mics up, listen for where feedback's about to start first, and then use your parametric EQ. Most feedback happens in the mid-range frequencies. That's why you'll notice if you've got like a parametric EQ on your mixing desk where you'll usually have like high and low, and that's just one knob. And then you might have two mid knobs, which is actually four knobs, right? Yeah. What it is you've got a frequency button, frequency knob, which is turning through a frequency range, and a cut and a gain knob, which is going to boost or cut at the frequency you've selected on the other. So what I would do is the knob on the mid-range control that is the boost or cut, I'd boost it a few dB.
Get that feedback going even more, yeah.
Yeah, I'd boost it quite a lot, and then just slowly sweep the frequency one until the feedback that you heard was about to happens a lot. That means you found the frequency.
Yeah. And then
you cut then you take the gain knob and you cut it down. What you've done is you've isolated that frequency that is giving you feedback, and you're cutting only at that frequency. So you're doing the same thing when you're bringing the volume down on the microphone to stop.
Yeah, but you're just doing it globally.
All the frequencies down when you do it. So you're affecting the sound quite adversely. So if you do it with the EQ, you can effectively just turn down the frequency that's feeding back, and the rest of those frequencies, they remain where they should be, and that way you get a much better sound. So feedback is really, it's not necessarily a problem, it's information. It's the room telling you, I have a problem at this frequency, by the way, you should sort that out.
Dial it out.
You should dial it out. And once you found it on one microphone, because it's a room thing, what I used to do with our band with Roadrunner, I'd find the main frequency that was feeding back. Once I'd cut it on one mic, I'd just do the same setting on all the others, and then we never have feedback problems.
We didn't at all.
No, because you just found that fundamental problem in the room and you cut it out in the desk. So that's the next step. That's kind of called, a sound engineer will call that ringing out the system, finding the problems in the room and ringing them out with the EQ.
Nice.
Then at that point, you need to be getting the musicians, the band members to sound check, line check. You want to listen to everyone individually. Whatever's connected to a mic, you want to be listening to it individually first until you're happy with how it sounds coming in. And then once you've got everything coming in and you're happy with the individual sound of everything, then you should be mixing the balance of the band in your headphones, get it sounding how you want, and then send it to front of house and go out and listen to how it's coming out of the speakers. Is it loud enough? Is it quiet enough? Are the speakers imparting and the room imparting any changes to the frequency spectrum that I didn't hear in the headphones? Do I need more bottom, top, mid? Make some adjustments, and then once you're happy, do your monitor mixes and then gig. And that's basically it.
That's amazing. And how long would you allow for that process for the average band? Obviously, you'll get quicker over time doing it, but how long would you say? Because setup should be a pleasurable experience and things, but as you get closer to 9 o'clock and you're about to go on, and if you're still in the middle of trying to find a frequency that's causing issues, or you're getting feedback, or a mic's not working, then panic starts to set in, and then all of a sudden it starts to fall apart, and you end up invariably with a worse sound that you started with because you've not finished going through this. So I think time is also important. So what would your advice be to the average gigging band to allow to go through those steps that you've really nicely laid out for us?
It's a really good question, because the first time you do it, you shouldn't be doing it in a gig situation. If you're doing if you've got a new PA system and you're going to decide to do all this stuff, mic everything up, do that in a rehearsal space the first time. It's going to be some effort, but you don't want to have issues that you don't know how to solve before a gig and then lose confidence in it. Get used to it first in rehearsal space. There's some elements to what I mentioned, like when I said get the sound of the band right and through the mics, and then mix the sound of how you want the band to sound in your headphones first. That part shouldn't change from gig to gig. So once you've done your first gig and you're happy with the mix of everything and how everything sounds, just take a photo of that, and that can be your starting point the next gig, and you'll find that part of the sound engineering will take a fraction of time than it did the first time.
That's good advice. How did we do it last time? Use that as the benchmark. Good idea.
Start with that. Same with your mics. If you're using the same mics for the same instruments, make sure your amps and stuff have the same settings as they did last time. And what it should be going forward after the first couple of times is just a matter of adjustment rather than having to rewrite the book on sound engineering each gig. But once you're used to it, I'd say an hour is enough. The first time you do it, maybe give yourself an hour and a half. Doesn't have to be particularly complicated. If you're a 5-piece band, like you guys are, 5-piece guitar rock band, an hour to an hour and a half tops should be what you need to do this. I have one last piece of advice as well. This is a bit of homework as well. This is really going to help with solving problems on the fly. And that's to do with the way we hear sound and perceive sound and translating that into equalization. So I bet I could describe something to you and you know what I mean in your head. So if I said to you, can you imagine in your head what a person sounds like what's the best way to describe this? Could you imagine in your head if I said a nasal sounding singer? Yeah,
absolutely.
So if you were listening to a band thinking, well, the band sounds that singer sounds too nasally or a bit too kind of honky sounding, it's not been EQ'd properly, you'd understand. You can picture in your mind's ear what that sounds like, right? But can you translate that to a frequency range on an EQ? If you were to immediately try and, EQ that out to make it sound better, a bit more rounded, a bit more flat, would you know what frequency to go to immediately?
That's a really good skill. So I would potentially start with the mid-range and be looking to kind of maybe boost the mid-range frequencies a little bit, but which exact frequencies, I'm not sure. It'd be a case of me experimenting, but I know, and having worked with you for a long time, that you would know, and others that I've worked with as well. Again, I'll mention him again, but Damien Lodrick again has taught me a lot about this, and he has the same approach to you, where he goes, "Yeah, I know what frequency that is, and it would be, I'd be boosting this by about this much to overcome it." So, but there's a science to it, isn't it? You can train yourself to try and understand what all these different frequencies are for different instruments, and identify more quickly what it is you're trying to do with the EQ.
That's right. And also there are common problems with certain instruments. So like, for example, if you mic up a kick drum, you don't want to be just thinking, well, it's low end, so I just want to boost the bass and cut the top,
Right.
There are certain elements and there's fundamentals to the sound. There are overtones. There'll be certain parts across the entire frequency range that are important to the sound of that kick drum. So when a kick drum sounds like it's too like woofy, like it's making like a horrible sound in the mid range. That's, you can know the thumps there, I know the clicks there, but this horrible boxiness happening in the mid range, it tends to be at around 600 hertz, which is kind of upper mids, So you'd want to cut around that, but you might not know if you're not a sound engineer, you're doing this for the first time. So going through that stage I said earlier of listening to things on headphones and getting it sounding good, that's probably going to be your most challenging part, because if you can identify in your ear, this doesn't sound good, I don't know how to make it better, that's an important bit of homework I think everyone should do. But there's good news. You don't have to spend time listening to frequency ranges and instruments and trying to figure it all out.
Memorizing each one.
Exactly. You can just go on the internet and you can get a cheat sheet, which is basically just a picture of the audio frequency range, from like 20 hertz up to 20k hertz. And there'll be lists of different instruments, different items, and it'll tell you, where along the frequency range are certain characteristics for this instrument. So I'm looking at one now that I put on the agenda, and the top one is the kick drum. And what it's telling me, this cheat sheet, is that between kind of 20 and 100 hertz is the bottom end.
Yeah.
Between 100 and 300 hertz is where you get the rounded sound of the kick drum, so that boxiness. And then above 300 hertz is where you get the muddiness, so that's the stuff that you want to be cutting out. The snap and the slap of the beater is at like 2k above, so these are really interesting things. It's telling me where the different characteristics of these instruments exist in the frequency range. So if I'm listening to a kick drum and thinking, I can hear the beater way too much, it sounds like a click, not a thump, what's wrong? Well, I can look at my cheat sheet and go, oh, okay, I need to cut above 2 hertz or 2 kilohertz. Same with things like piano, for example. The piano goes from about, do you know what the frequency range of a piano is?
I don't.
I looked this up actually last time. So the frequency range of a piano is from about 80 hertz, I think, or
wow, that's quite low,
to up to about 4K.
Right.
You go from the bottom key and just play every key all the way up to the top. That's practically everything from just above what the human ear can hear to, upper mids going into highs. That's a huge frequency range.
Yeah,
if you're EQing a piano, that can be quite difficult. But understand, if you're listening to a piano and you think it sounds quite muddy, that tends to happen around 300 hertz. And that's not something I've necessarily learned. Just looking at this cheat sheet, it's telling me. So get a cheat sheet.
Yeah, good advice.
Download a picture of it, print it off and stick it in the box with your mixing desk or where your headphones are. And then if you think something sounds a particular way, this cheat sheet will tell you, what you're thinking, but it'll tell you where in the frequency range that's happening. And it'll really help.
Oh, man, that is such great advice. And it's also, again, reminded me how lucky we were to have you in our last band with all of this knowledge.
Thanks, dude.
Oh, man, what a pleasure. What an absolute pleasure. It's such great tips and advice you shared with us today, Matt. I can't thank you enough, honestly, man. It's given me the inspiration to sit down with the guys and figure out how we manage this all together, because, we were lucky, and I've been in bands where I've been lucky enough to have people that just know all of this stuff and they take care of it for you, so you can just plug in and play. But that shouldn't be taken for granted, and I think now it's incumbent on all of us, certainly in my bands, to kind of figure this out and support each other and work together to try and get that sound. And it's going to be a bit of learning curve and arming ourselves with some knowledge that you talked about, but it will pay dividends. So, thank you so much for everything that you shared today, mate.
Yeah, no worries. And like I said, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. You don't have to go from 0 to 100 in this. I think what you've been talking about doing and just kind of miking up your amps and just doing that for now, just to try and bring your stage volume down, is a really great way of starting to improve your system. You might find that's all you need to do for you guys. But going forward, you might find you want to improve everything as much as you can, and you can do it. You can do it without having to, learn, do a 3-year degree in sound engineering or anything like that. You don't have to do it.
Yeah, but it's nice to have, as you are case in point, obviously.
Yeah. There we go.
Oh, mate, thank you for that.
Yeah, it's been a good one today. It's been a long one, a complicated one, but it's been good fun.
I've enjoyed about it. Yeah, well, I think this is going to be the beginning of the journey for you and I, in the same way that we've been revisiting guitar tech tips and setup tips periodically after we did the initial kind of masterclass session on it. This, I think, has been a great start to it. I feel like I'm just beginning to taste the initial kind of potential with this, and I've got no doubt I'll be coming back to you with some more questions and future podcasts around that experience as we've been trying out all of these different things to get your advice on it.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing how you guys get on, mate. And
cheers, pal. Cheers.
Here's to better sound in the future.
Here is to better sound.
That deserves it. A band deserves to be heard in better detail. And
doesn't every band deserve it? Every band deserves it. So,
exactly.
Cool, man.
Brilliant. All right, mate. Well, looking forward to having another catch up with you next week. You got anything planned other than gigs for the week, guitar wise, music wise?
No, just gigs for the week, and then what I might do is see if we can get a rehearsal in to try out some of the things that you've suggested. I think that is one thing that I'll take away from today is for the first time you try and do it, don't try and do it in a gig situation in a strange venue under pressure of setting up and having to go on. Do it in a rehearsal first where you've got more time just to focus on that element, and then we'll try it at a gig. So I think that's what I'm going to try and do this week, if I can, is speak to the guys about setting up the PA and trying these things out in a rehearsal setting. So that's what I'll try and do. And then just 2 gigs this weekend. So with family stuff and work stuff and everything, that's going to be a full week for me. How about you? Any pieces that you're working on or playing with? You've got a gig coming up as well.
I've got a gig coming up on the 10th September, which is a wedding gig down in Kent somewhere. That's going to be good fun, I think, because obviously it's a bigger band, 7 or 8 piece band. So nice. I like those gigs because I get to kind of sit back a little bit. I don't have to worry too much about playing too much guitar, but also at the same time, I like listening to other musicians. That's the thing I've always enjoyed the most about playing live. I like hearing other talented musicians. It's not all about me. As much as I love playing guitar and doing guitar solos and things like that, most of these gigs I'm just on rhythm guitar duty all night. 1 or 2 songs maybe. Johnny Be Good and Sora Standing There by the Beatles tends to be the only songs I get to solo on. But I get to listen to other amazing musicians, sax player and a keys player who's awesome, and it's just everyone. So I enjoy those gigs more because I feel like I'm surrounded by inspiring musicians.
I totally get that. That's often what makes the gig. It's not your own stuff. You've heard yourself play before. It's how that interacts with other people and what they do to the song, which you're not expecting, and they take you by surprise, and you go, "Oh, that was a cheeky little fill," or that was a great little note choice. Those are the things that put a smile on my face at gigs. It's what other people do. Yeah, okay.
That's right. And it's just occurred to me as well that when this podcast comes out, it'll be after that gig. So how spooky is that? So I have a gig last Friday. That's what I should be saying.
Time and relativity has just dawned on you.
Musician with a sense of time? No.
Never. All right, buddy. Well, we better wrap it up. We'll be back again next week, I have no doubt, for more great conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, bud. Have a cracking week, mate. Good gig tonight, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, take care, pal. Speak to you soon.
All the best, bud. Well, there we have it. Another great show this week from us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got lots of information from that one. Remember to come and support us on our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram. Just go there and search for Guitar Smarts. Leave us a rating and review in your podcast app that you listen to us on. And if you want to buy some merch, then follow the links in the description as well to our Etsy shop where you can buy some Guitar Smarts merchandise. And also, if you do want to support the show but you're not bothered about getting some merchandise, come and say hello to us on buymeacoffee.com/Guitar Smarts, where you can leave us a small donation that can really help to support the show. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon. Bye.